Good day, folks, and welcome to another edition of Lumberjack Logic. I'm your host, Neil Johnson, and folks, I have some Gavin Newsom news. In fact, news so delicious, so outstanding that you're going to want to grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy, because, folks, this is awesome. Gavin Newsom, of course, is running for president of the United States, even though he hasn't announced it formally. And so what he's doing is he's trying to take Trump on X while getting blown away in court, which is what this video will be about. But first, check this out. Donald Trump doesn't want you to see this picture. He's literally destroying the White House. They're making this big deal because Donald Trump is building a ballroom, right? Well, Matt Gaetz posted that with Gavin Newsom doesn't want you to see this picture. He's literally destroying California. That's right. The guy who can take a $100 billion surplus and in 3 years turn it into a $68 billion deficit. That's Gavin Newsom, folks. He's on par with Tim Walz, who has more fraud in Minnesota than anybody knows what to do with. It's just Gavin Newsom does it bigger because he's got a bigger state. But folks, he was just defeated in court. But what makes this so ultimately great is you have to go back to September 3rd when Gavin Newsom tweeted this. He said, nearly 3 months ago, Donald Trump sent the National Guard into California without consulting the governor and despite local law enforcement having things under control. Remember how under control it was with the ICE agents getting attacked? Yes. The bricks get thrown at him, everything. Now justice has been served. A federal court ruled the president is not above the law. I am going to play the accompanying video and then talk about how he was soundly defeated. But I also want you to check out my sponsor, MyPillow. That's mypillow.com/lumberjack for big savings and free shipping right now with the code on the best sleep products available. Or call 1-800-568-2865. Roll the video.
What then ensued was the use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders.
Interesting that he brings up Trump's unwillingness to work with California's law enforcement leaders, because I want to take you to this. LA police chief's resistance to Trump deportation plans has little to do with liberal politics. Now, this is from Cal Matters. It's nonprofit and nonpartisan news. And folks, I just want to tell you something. Whenever you see the words nonprofit and nonpartisan, it is very partisan. And it is very much for profit in terms of salaries for the people running it. And it will always be liberal. Always. Okay, but listen to this. Ballots in Los Angeles were still being counted last week when the resistance to President-elect Donald Trump began to take shape. By Friday, the city's incoming police chief, Jim McDonnell, was promising the Los Angeles Police Department would refuse support for Trump's much ballyhooed deportation schemes. How nonpartisan does that sound with the word ballyhooed in there? But anyways, the national election has caused many Angelenos to feel a deep, deep fear, McDonnell said, only if they're illegals doing illegal things, in a statement to the city council, which was debating and ultimately approved his nomination. I want to be unequivocal, he added. LAPD will protect LA's migrant community. We will not cooperate with mass deportation. So in other words, the person who said that they weren't going to cooperate with Trump at all is who Gavin Newsom is saying that Trump should have checked in with. Absolutely wild.
Commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose.
Okay, there's so much to unpack here in what Gavin Newsom said, but remember, this is when he was riding a high because he got a decision that he liked. That back on September 2nd, he released this video on September 3rd. And he claimed that he had it all under control initially, that the law enforcement of California had it all under control. Does this look like they had it all under control? Do you remember this scene? Now, does that, I mean, really, they didn't have anything under control. And there were a lot of other videos of police cars getting attacked, all of that. And then Karen Bass, remember, told the LA Police Department they couldn't respond to the ICE agents, but they had it all under control? No. And furthermore, there was nothing illegal about it, as we're going to find out. And also, Trump has the ability as commander-in-chief to control the National Guard in situations like what were happening in California. So there Gavin Newsom is riding high, but he's going to get defeated here. He got defeated yesterday. But this all started back in June. If you remember, that's when all these anti-ICE protests were going on, and Trump said, enough's enough, we're going to deploy the National Guard. Okay, so the Newsom versus Trump lawsuit was brought in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California on June 9th of 2025. At first requesting immediate relief. So go back, think TRO. You hear this all the time now. Temporary restraining order, injunctive relief, immediately granted, right? Which was denied by Judge Breyer on the next day. But on June 12th, Breyer ruled against the Trump administration, which promptly appealed to the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, okay, being granted a stay of that ruling. So they granted a stay, said that ruling doesn't need to be enforced. Then on June 17th, an appellate panel of the Ninth Circuit held a hearing for the case. And on June 19th, the appellate court of the Ninth Circuit extended the stay granted on June 12th. But then on September 2nd, and it was September 3rd when Gavin Newsom made that video, remember the timeline, Breyer ruled that the use of the National Guard did violate the Posse Comitatus Act and issued an injunction blocking deployment of the National Guard in California, which now leads up to yesterday's decision, where Donald Trump scores a major legal win over Gavin Newsom. This out of Newsweek. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit has declined to rehear Newsom versus Trump en banc. Okay, and I know you're thinking, en banc, what does that mean? I had to look up how to pronounce it. It's French, and it means on the bench, or meaning a hearing by the full court. And since they have declined to rehear, it has effectively upheld a prior ruling that permits Donald Trump to maintain federal authority over California National Guard troops deployed in Los Angeles during protests earlier this year. This means that Trump will be using the National Guard again in the deportation efforts in the state of California. In his October 22nd, 2025 order, the court said a majority of eligible judges did not support rehearing the case. So let me just really quickly, I did an AI search on this, and apparently en banc is handled differently in different courts, especially in the Ninth Circuit, because it's so big. There are 29 active judges. So the Ninth Circuit's en banc process is unique given its size. As the largest appellate circuit in the country, it has 29 active judgeships, which is far too many to participate in a rehearing. Instead, the full court takes a vote on whether to rehear an appeal. So it's the full court making this decision. The Newsom versus Trump case carries implications far beyond California's border, testing the limits of presidential authority to deploy military forces within the United States. Yet he is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he is able to quell uprisings within the country that are actually, Abraham Lincoln did this. You could go on and, you can debate the use of this, but the bottom line is the commander in chief is Donald Trump, and he is simply utilizing his executive authority. The ruling raises fundamental questions about the balance between federal and state authority, the separation of civilian and military roles in law enforcement, and how future presidents might invoke emergency powers to respond to protests or crises without a governor's consent. Now, I find this fascinating because we have found that law enforcement in California is unwilling to enforce the law. We are constantly seeing across the nation, not only in California, repeat offenders, people who have committed 30 violent crimes and they're continually released. I have friends in law enforcement. They tell me that if you simply lock people up after the third offense, you'd eliminate 80% of the crime because it's always repeat offenders who are consistently being let go. So how are you supposed to handle that when the state hates its people so much that it's unwilling to enforce laws? And California is so wild because listen to this. I'm going to share something with you. So they used to have a sheriff in Los Angeles County, Alex Villanueva. I'm going to pull from a Political article from 2022. Los Angeles Sheriff Alex Villanueva wrote a wave of progressive energy to become the first Democrat and Spanish speaker to win the seat in more this century. Now his party is having buyer's remorse. A campaign promise to reform a troubled department has given way to 4 years of scandals, attacks on journalists, and conservative rhetoric around crime that has shocked Democrats and endeared him to far-right media figures like Tucker Carlson. Okay, and it goes on to talk about his chances for victory. But listen to this. Those who backed Villanueva based on promises that he would cut ties with federal immigration enforcement, crack down on department corruption, and reduce the prison population, are now flabbergasted at his pivot toward Republican talking points like blaming wokeism for declining living standards in the country and his vitriolic reactions to those who question his policies. So this is a guy who was kind of leaning towards working with federal authorities. They got rid of him in California. And listen to this. The next sheriff, okay, is Robert Luna. Now, you might have seen Robert Luna on the news because Robert Luna made it clear, okay, that he ain't working with Donald Trump. As reported by ABC News, Trump confirmed his plans when he responded to social media posts from Tom Fitton on November 18th. Fitton had posted statements earlier in November that reports demonstrate that the incoming administration is preparing to utilize military assets to deport migrants. Okay? And good old Luna said, with fears of mass deportations growing among LA residents, Luna has spoken out on his department's role during these shifts in federal immigration policies. And he said it isn't changing much from its current operational procedures. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department does not enforce civil immigration enforcement, Luna stated. So we'll continue to do what we do. And what they do is continue to allow criminals to run free. But back to Newsweek here. Here's what we have. The case stems from those protests on June 6th of 2025. ICE reported 44 arrests and about 70 to 80 detentions. According to court filings, demonstrations near the Metropolitan Detention Center turned confrontational, with objects being thrown at officers and minor damage to federal property. Folks, I don't know about you, but as a tax-paying citizen, when they're hurtling rocks at the vehicles that I bought, I have a problem with that. Comment in the chat. Do you have a problem with them throwing rocks and bricks at vehicles and destroying the property that you have purchased as a taxpayer? Seriously, I cannot even believe that this is up for debate. You don't damage the property the taxpayers have bought, especially when they're doing their job and actually enforcing federal law. Okay? Governor Gavin Newsom has objected to the National Guard being invoked, right? And he said that the situation was under control, which obviously it wasn't. But he is not getting his rear hearing. And here's where it goes from here. And this is why Gavin Newsom is quiet right now when he was so excited before, and why he's not going to do anything, because the next stop is the United States Supreme Court. And he ain't going to win there, folks. This is a massive win, not only for Trump, but for you, the people, and the right to deport people out of this country who are not here legally, who are taking your jobs. I just did a live yesterday, and I talked about the H-1B visa problem. And right now, that program is being overused. The average income of the H-1B visa holders is $120,000 a year. They are posting the jobs in local newspapers that nobody reads so that they don't have to give the jobs to Americans. These are the things that are going on. This is why we're upset, and this is why we like Donald Trump. Remember to subscribe if you're new to this channel, because folks, we got the good people over here. And smash that like on your way out. And do check out my sponsor, MyPillow, mypillow.com/lumberjack for big savings on the best sleep products available. See you on the next episode. Peace out.